This is Sean. Welcome back to the American Soccer Coach. This video is going to be about what city in the world I think is truly the soccer capital of the entire globe. And now, when I say this, it would be easy to say a place like Paris would be the capital because so many players are produced in Paris. However, I'm taking into account the size of these cities when I decide what is the capital. So, for example, a city like Paris produces so many talented players that have played for France and other national teams, but also Paris is a very large city. So I decided to go a different route, and rather than choosing a city like Paris or London, or even Sao Paulo, three very large cities that have produced several players, several talented players, I decided to look at what is a city that is significantly smaller than those three I mentioned, that has also had a track record of not just producing players, but producing world class coaches as well. And so when I look at that, I think of a city in South America that stands out the most. It stands out because it's a very small city compared to those, and it has given so much back to the game in terms of both players and coaches. So my pound for pound soccer capital of the world is a city, the third most popular city in Argentina. It has produced the likes of Lionel Messi, Di Maria, Mario Icardi, Lo Celso, Ever Banega, Ansaldi, Musacchio, and Ezekiel Garay. Coaches has produced Marcelo Bielsa, one of the greatest coaches ever. Even though he hasn't really won that many titles, his influence has been significant in the game. Marcelo Bielsa, Cesar Luis Menotti, the coach who won the 1978 World Cup for Argentina, Tata Martino, who has coached Paraguay, Barcelona, and Jorge Sampaoli, who has coached Chile and also Argentina in the World Cup. So the city is Rosario, Argentina. Several of these players, several of these coaches have played for or coached at Newell's Old Boys. That's the club that Messi came from. That's the club that Marcelo Bielsa coached at. And then you also have Rosario Central, which is the team that Di Maria Di Maria played for Rosario Central before eventually transferring to Europe, going to Benfica, and then from there, obviously making his way to clubs like Man United, Real Madrid, PSG. Not in that order, but yes. So Rosario only has a population of 1.3 million people. So with 1.3 million people, Rosario has produced arguably the greatest player ever, in Lionel Messi, one of the most influential coaches in history, in Marcelo Bielsa. So again, you might not necessarily see Marcelo Bielsa with any World Cups or any Champions League titles, but if you look at several of the coaches like Pochettino, if you look at coaches like Pep Guardiola, all of these guys go back to Marcelo Bielsa and consider him a huge influence. And not just that, but you have coaches like Tata Martino, who I believe played under Marcelo Bielsa. You have coaches like Jorge Sampaoli, who is a huge fan of Marcelo Bielsa's style of play, and actually implemented something similar with Chile when Chile had a very successful team with Alexis Sanchez, with Arturo Vidal, with Gary Medel, and players like this. Okay, so Rosario, I think, it truly is the capital of soccer. Again, considering the population, just 1.3 million people, which is so small compared to places like Sao Paulo, which has produced several good players, Paris, London, and cities like this. Obviously, you have other areas. I mean, the country of Uruguay in itself is only 3.4 million people, so you could argue that Uruguay could be another candidate. But I think Rosario is the third largest city in Argentina. Buenos Aires is obviously significantly first place in that category, but then even Cordoba is slightly larger than Rosario. So the third biggest city in Argentina with just 1.3 million people has had such an impact on the game, and will continue to, because there's always going to be young players coming from this area that eventually make their debuts in Argentina and then eventually get sold off to larger teams in Europe. So why has Rosario been so successful? From some of the people in Argentina that I've talked to have said that one of the biggest things is that in Rosario, like, you really have to earn it. Obviously, Buenos Aires, with so many people, is filled with there's so many teams in Buenos Aires. Like, obviously, River Plate, Boca Juniors, San Lorenzo, Racing, but there's several other teams. And so in Rosario, you really have two main teams, and maybe the players don't come from necessarily the best backgrounds. And so probably more so in Rosario than a city like Buenos Aires, the players need to have a professional career, not just to become professionals, but also support their family and help them out. And for a lot of these players, they can't do that until they officially sign their pro deal with professional clubs. And then eventually, if they get sold off, obviously now they're making a lot of money. Um, so let me know what you guys think is the soccer capital of the world. Please just remember that I'm taking it into account not just who has talented players and coaches, but also the population. Okay, because I mean, like Paris would Paris would be better than Rosario, but Paris has significantly larger population than Rosario. So take into account population, but also take into account obviously things like talent and stuff like that. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for tuning in. Take care.